Hello everyone, and welcome back to Student Economist, where choosing to spend your time here is infinitely better than the opportunity cost. Today, part 4 of the series, we have the 2019 Paper 1 Unit 1 Cape Economics paper. Let's get right into it. So, first question, the use of land to build hospital reduces the amount of land available for factory construction. This situation best illustrates the concept of B, scarcity. This goes back to the central or basic economic problem. We see that there's choice between the hospital and the factory, and the amount of land which would represent the finite resources. 2 says, as the price of good X increased from $5 to $11, the quantity supplied increased from 700 to 820. What is the value of the price elasticity of supply? So again, remember your price elasticity of supply formula, percentage change of quantity supplied over the percentage change in price. Then we calculate each one. This would be quantity supplied, this would be price. You'd end up with 17%, end up over 120%, and then you get A. Okay. Baker can bake any of the two combinations of cakes and loaves using the following options. What is the opportunity cost of producing one cake? So as you can see, in order to get 3 cakes, you have to give up 21 breads. So the opportunity cost of 3 cakes would be 21 bread. So we just do the inverse proportion to find out how much is the opportunity cost to produce one single loaf of bread, and that would be 7. Moving on, a production possibility frontier that bows outwards indicates A, that would indicate increasing opportunity costs as more of one good is produced. So this is essentially referring to the concave. Sorry, that's not John well. This is referring to the concave PPF, which indicates increasing opportunity costs. Let me just put it here. Increasing opportunity costs. Because as you go down the curve, you increasingly have to give up more of good Y in order to get the same one extra of good X. So you consistently have to give up more of good Y as you go down the curve to get more of good X. So that's A. Alright, 5 to 6. So it says, due to technical problems being experienced at the CMC bauxite plant, Mr. Brown and engineers suffered a pay cut. It was noticed shortly after that he purchased less fish fillets and more chicken parts. So it says, what type of goods do fish fillets represent? So it's imperative to know that this question is actually speaking about normal and inferior goods. So normal and inferior goods really have to do with income elasticity. Well, not really income elasticity, but income in general. Income and quantity demanded. So normal goods possess a positive income elasticity, while inferior goods possess a negative income elasticity. So this means that the relationship between quantity demanded and income have a direct relation in normal goods. So as the consumer increases their income, there is an increase in the quantity demanded of that normal good. And likewise, well, not likewise, but contrastingly, inferior goods have a negative relationship, meaning that as the income increases, the quantity demanded of the inferior good decreases, and vice versa, where as income decreases, the quantity demanded of the inferior good goes up. So, as we can see right here, Mr. Brown is taking a pay cut. So that means he has a decrease. Is a decrease in income. Right? So, for a normal good, there needs to also be a responding decrease in quantity demanded. And we can see that this would be the normal good because it says it's less fish fillets. So as he decreases in income, he decreases his consumption of fish fillets. C. And chicken parts, the inverse. as his income decreases, he purchases more chicken parts. So there's an inverse or negative relationship between income and quantity demanded, which shows that yes, D is the answer for 6. 7 says, what is the most likely reason for the fall in price from OP1 to OP2? And that is simply because of an increase in supply. And this is shown by a rightward shift of the supply curve from S0 to S1. So that's B. Item 8 says, which segment of the curves represents the short run supply curve? And that would be from E to H. A. An increase in the price of yams is most likely to D. Cause a movement along the demand curve from X to Y. So remember, this is in keeping with the law of demand. So as price increases, quantity demanded decreases. They have an inverse relationship, and this is true. So as price increases from $20 to $30, there is a corresponding decrease in quantity demanded from 2 units to 1 unit. So D. Okay, for question 10 it says, which of the following characteristics is not true of the oligopolistic industry? And the answer is B. They are price takers. The firms are price takers. That's not true. They're actually price setters. And this is shown by the fact that there are a few large firms in the industry. So they actually dominate the industry, and they'd be able to set their own prices based on that. And they also have some type of interdependence with their prices, which leads to what we call sticky prices or price rigidity. So yeah, the only firm with price takers is the perfectly competitive industry. Okay. 11 says, which of the following points indicates optimum production? So for this question, it would really be where 3 is, because this is the minimum of the AC curve, and remember, at the minimum of the AC curve indicates productive efficiency, right? And productive efficiency just simply means that the producer is making the good at the minimum or the lowest cost possible with no excess capacity. So that is where optimum production is taking place, where there's no excess capacity. 12 says, assuming that a firm is earning normal profits, at what point would marginal revenue be equal to marginal cost? Again, the answer would be 3, because if we're assuming that this is for instance, a perfectly competitive industry, we draw the demand curve right here, and we'd find that, hold on, we draw the line here, we find that the demand is equal to the MR, which is equal to AR. So as you can see, we've satisfied MR equal MC right here at 3, and additionally, at this point on the AR curve through MR equal MC, we get our price, and we'd also get our cost, because cost is intersecting right there as well where the AC curve is at its minimum. And where price and cost would be equal, that is where normal profits are made. It's the minimum profits needed by the firm to actually stay in business. 13 says, which area on the graph depicts consumer surplus? Answer is B, put. So this is essentially the market price right here. This is the reservation price, that is the highest price the consumer is willing and able to pay. And then this is just the market equilibrium right here. So this entire area represents the additional benefit to consumers due to the fact that they are able to pay less than they're absolutely willing to pay at maximum, right? Magic Limited observed that it hired additional fairy godmothers. No, it observed as it hired additional fairy godmothers, the marginal output of glass slippers initially increased and then decreased continuously. And this is the law of diminishing returns. So the law of diminishing returns states that as more of a variable factor is added to a fixed factor, the marginal utility will initially increase and then peak at its maximum, and then it will continue to actually decrease. So it follows like a mountain type of model where it initially increases and then it peaks and then it falls until it reaches zero. So that's the law of diminishing returns. Which of the following statements is true if good X is an inferior good? Again, remember from the last question we did with the chicken parts and fish fillet, inferior goods have a negative relationship. So in the best answer would be D, where it says the income elasticity of demand is negative. This is where as quantity demanded decreases, as quantity demanded decreases, income increases. Or the other, more so the other way around. As income increases, quantity demanded decreases for the inferior good, and as income decreases, quantity demanded for the inferior good increases. 16 says Moo Moo is a part of the milk industry where there are few large firms and high barriers to entry and exit. So large firms, that's already indicative of the market structure we need. There's control over the price and a high barriers to entry and exit. So already looking at the oligopoly. Buzz operates in the honey industry. There's hundreds of price taking firms. Price taking firms, that kind of sounds like perfect. And plus they said 100, so that means that there's many sellers and they're price taking. And additionally, they produce a homogeneous or identical good, which is perfect competition. C. A situation where it is impossible to reallocate consumption activities to make at least one person better off without making everyone else worse off is known as C. Pareto optimality. Which of the following goods are non-rivalry and non-excludable? And that's B. Public good. Public goods are goods that tend to be non-rival, non-excludable, as well as being zero priced. 19 says, which of the following situations represents a negative externality? And this is A, where social cost is less than private costs. This would lead to an external cost being sustained. Positive economic profit exists where AR is greater than AC. D. Which of the following is a public good? This is a merit good. I just say that this is an economic good. The answer could be bus transportation, but in some cases it could be a merit good. But it's more of a public good. But well, let me not say it's a merit good. It's more of a public good. But C is a better answer because C, streetlights are actually like completely what you call it now. They are pure. They're a pure public good because you can't exclude anybody from utilizing the street light because the street light is just there. It's out on the road and you can't block anybody from using it, so it's non-excludable in that regard, right? And additionally, it's non-rivalrous because the use of a street light isn't going to the consumption of it isn't going to prevent others from using it. So if somebody uses the street light to say fix their car, it's not stopping others from actually using that same light to possibly, I don't know, walk across the road. So it's non-rivalrous in that regard as well. Bus transportation, it could be excludable. So yeah, best answer is C. 22 says what level of profit is being made, and that is A, normal profit. We see that because if you go along the line where MR equal MC right here, you go up all the way up to the demand curve. You find that price is right there and cost is right there as well. So price is equal to cost. That's normal profit, where AR equal AC. And you can see it right here. AR, which is the demand curve, is equal to AC. 23 says the Flintstone Quarry Limited is aware of the negative environmental impacts of its quarry activities in the Bedrock Hills. The company organizes an annual reforestation drive and also maintains a small park and recreation grounds for the community of Bedrock Hills. The scenario above represents an example of correcting market failure via the adoption of D, corporate social responsibility. So, we're talking about the fact that they are aware of their negative environmental impacts. They organize an annual reforestation drive and they make a small park and recreational ground. So this is all about embracing their corporate social responsibility and their impact on the environment. And remember, we always look at the fact that they're actually realizing that they are a custodian for the environment. Whenever you see them talking about the environment and the community, always look to corporate social responsibility, because they understand that they have to take care of it, and the firm has a responsibility to take care of the community as well. 24 says, which of the following goods can be provided by the market but are usually subsidized or provided by the government to increase social benefits? B, merit goods. So obviously you can point to the fact that it says social benefits. So that means that it's going to try and increase the external benefits. Remember, social benefit is equal to private benefits plus external benefits. So in order to, if the subsidization would increase the positive externalities, which would overall increase the social benefits. The term deadweight loss can be best defined as B, a decrease in the net welfare of society. So this is where there's an inequality between social marginal benefit and social marginal costs. If the production of a good results in positive externalities, then D, the production of the good should be subsidized. So this is what we see a lot with merit goods. The government usually steps in to actually produce more of these goods because they generate positive externalities. And we see that in industries like education and healthcare. Education case, it probably produces a more educated and trained society, which will allow for greater productivity, and overall it decreases crime because people are in school and they'll be able to reform their ideologies, etc., etc. And with healthcare, overall, with more healthcare, you'd be able to have a healthier nation, lower mortality rate, things of that nature. 27 says, if the cost of producing a good to additional person is 0, then the good is, I need to change this answer. It is not non-excludable, it is actually non-rival. This is where the marginal cost of producing is actually 0, and that's a non-rival good. 28 says, which of the following areas represents a deadweight loss to society if production is at level G, output level G? So we're here at output level G. Please remember that optimality is achieved where SMB is equal to SMC. So that would be at Z at output R. So essentially, we're overproducing right here, because really and truly society wants this level of production, but we're producing more than we should right here. So what we need to do is actually go to R, output level R, and this would generate what we call an external cost, right? And this overall external cost shows that it gives a deadweight loss right here, ZXY, due to overproduction. So the answer right here would be A for 28. What does the distance on the graph above represents? They should say the distance is XY. I don't know what they're doing for this paper, but the distance on the graph above, XY, which would be this distance right here, would represent external cost, and that would be D. 30 says, based on the size of the Herfindahl-Hirschman index for the data in the table above, How would this market be described? So remember, for HHI, square your numbers, right? You square every number and add them up, and you get this figure right here. And then we'd say that it's highly concentrated because if the figure is greater than 1,800, it would be considered highly concentrated. This question says, which of the following terms describes the relationship between factory rewards and the cost of production? And this is a direct relationship because the more rent, the more labor, land, capital, and entrepreneurship you use, the more rent, interest, wages, and profits you garner. So there's a sort of risk and reward relationship. So the more risk, the more reward. The more factors you get, the more rewards you can possibly get as well. So that's a direct relationship. Which of the following factors is not likely to cause a shift in the supply curve for labor? Remember that the cost of labor is wages. So the answer would be A, because that would actually only cause an expansion or contraction of the supply curve for labor. All the other ones would actually shift the curve though. 33 says marginal physical product is best described as the change in D, the change in D, which is the total output from employing an extra unit of labor. 31 says, which of the following economic concepts does the area in the shaded triangle above represent? And that's B, economic rent. So that is the excess of transferred earnings right here in this shaded area. 35 says the factors that are most likely to have caused this movement are 1 and 2. That is an increase in worker productivity and an increase in the price of the final good. A. Says for 36, the demand for a factor of production is a derived demand. This means that the demand for the factor comes from the D, the demand for the product that is made from the factor. So you can always look at the example of steel or look at the example of teachers. Steel is not used by the end consumer. It's not desired or wanted by the end consumer actually, but it's desired for the fact that steel can be morphed or welded into other metallurgic products which are demanded by the final user. And likewise, teachers represent a derived demand because teachers are really needed for the educational services, but in order to get the educational services, you need teachers. So the demand for teachers is derived from the need for educational services. 37 says, which of the following government policies is least likely to reduce poverty? We say C, the implementation of a regressive tax system, because this would only exacerbate the poverty in that country. The real thing that we need to do with taxes, we need to implement a progressive tax system that would reduce poverty, but regressive would not reduce it, it would actually make it worse. 38 says the total social cost of cutting trees for lumber and firewood results in D. Remember, social cost is equal to private cost plus external cost. So D says rising chance of flooding, so that's the overall external cost, and then it says plus the private cost of cutting the trees, so that's both, so that's total social cost. 39 says Mr. and Mrs. Smith can afford to send their children to school, buy groceries, and pay their rent. However, they cannot afford to save or buy a car. This situation is an example of C, relative poverty. Relative poverty refers to when an household's income is below the average income in the nation. So the average income in this scenario most likely could buy a car as well. However, by the standards of absolute poverty, Mr. and Miss Smith would not be in absolute poverty because they're able to really get their basic needs. They're able to get their food, they're able to get shelter, and they're able to send their children to school as well. So the next best thing, they could be in relative poverty because the average household could possibly buy a car as well, but they're unable to do so. So they're in relative poverty. 40 says, when examining the Lorentz curve, a Gini coefficient of 100 is regarded as C, total inequality of income distribution. 41 says, what curve represents the greatest level of inequality? And this is DS. We look at the line of equality right here. The line of equality is the 45-degree angle coming from the angle line from the origin. So this line right here. And then the line of inequality is the standing line right here, which represents total inequality. So the furthest you are away from the line of equality, the more uneven your income distribution is. And the closer you are to inequality, the line of inequality obviously indicates that your income is more uneven than the others. So S is the closest curve to that. So D. Which of the following will have the smallest Gini coefficient? And that would be P, because it's the one closer to equality. And the closer you are to equality, the closer you are to, sorry, let me put the explanation down here. The closer you are to equality, the closer you are to 0. And the closer you are to 1, the closer you are to perfect inequality. So let me just unequal. Okay, let me erase that. So closer you are to 1, inequality. Closer you are to 0, that's equality. So seeing that curve P is the closest curve to equality, it would be the closest one to the smallest Gini coefficient, which would be 0. So A. Which of the following factors is most likely to cause the increase in the wage rate of construction workers? The answer is B, because this would actually, what's that now? It would actually cause for the workers to actually demand more income, because they would be the same income is needed to actually purchase the housing. So if the price of housing increases, that means that they need more income to actually buy it. So they would some maybe through some collective bargaining, etc., through the trade union, they'd be able to wager for an increase in wage rates and argue that the standard of living has increased because of the increased market price in housing. So the answer would be B for 43. 44 says a shifting in demand curve from DD to D1. D1 will result in a decrease in economic rent. And lastly, 45 says, which of the following represents labor supply? Labor supply refers to D, A to B. And just like that, we reach the end of our 2019 Paper 1 walkthrough. I do hope that you have learned something from this. Remember that the cost to learn or the price to learn is 0, so raise your demand for excellence.